As Tesla investors, it's always fun when you find another group of folks who are as excited about Tesla investment. Today, we'll watch video from a podcast called Dumb Money. Dave Hansen, Chris Camillo, and Jordan McLean make the case that the first company to hit $10 trillion will be none other than Tesla. They share their whole analysis and assumptions on the main product that they think will get Tesla there. So let's watch the best parts together and see if we agree with them. We've got Brian White joining us, and he and I are partners in crime. We like to do this together, and we have fun every Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me again, Brian.
Wonderful, wonderful introduction. Thank you, Herbert.
Yeah, so Brian has his own YouTube channel called MyTeslaWeekend. He actually goes and visits a lot of events, and you are going to be visiting even the big one in January, the CES event. And so you're going to be on the ground again. And so we'll look forward to grabbing you while you're doing all these interviews with amazing people. So follow his YouTube channel. So let's go take a look at some of these clips. This is, again, a podcast called Dumb Money. And it's just, you know, they're going to make statements about what they think is going to be the first $10 trillion company. They're going to talk about the business model, and we'll just take a watch on some of the clips and react to them. So let's listen to this.
Do you think that there is a company that can hit $10 trillion within the decade?
Yes, by 2030. I never thought I would say this. And quite honestly, in, the 35 years I've been investing, I've never felt this excited about an investing opportunity before. It's almost inconceivable how large this opportunity is. And I've been talking about this a lot the past year, and I think there are some people finally starting to catch up to my thesis. As you guys mentioned last week, there was a tweet about it, but I have a more measured take at what I think is going to be the first $10 trillion company. In fact, I don't even think it's that speculative of a prediction.
Let me pause it there for a second. So, sound familiar? There's many of us who are long-term Tesla investors who feel the same way about Tesla, who think just what he just said, right? But it's like, it's a measured take. I don't even think it's speculative. It's like...
Well, and okay. Adam Jonas of Morgan Stanley is saying the same thing. He's saying, I'm seeing big upside, and only something like 17% of it is automotive. The rest is the next big thing. And that part of that's autonomy, part of it's stationary storage, part of it is the bot. And part of it is software as a service. There's so many. You and I did a whole show where we said, if this part of Tesla was spun out into its own company, would you go and invest more money in it? And the answer for most of them was yes, absolutely.
Now let's finish this up and watch the rest. It's about a minute long.
I think it's almost an assumption that this is going to happen. The company I'm talking about is Tesla, and it might not be what you think. It's not about Tesla's automotive business. It's not about Tesla's energy business. I want to share a stat with you guys that is much more interesting than that $3 trillion stat. Okay, so by 2030, there will be a global human talent shortage of more than 85 million people. Okay, now left unchecked, that 2030 talent shortage is likely to result in $8.5 trillion in unrealized annual revenue. Okay, so that said, I'm going to share my analysis that shows you how the Optimus humanoid robot that Tesla is working on alone, okay, can get to a valuation of $10 trillion for Tesla without displacing a single human by 2030. Okay, so we're not talking about displacing humans. We're talking about simply helping in a very small way to cover a very tiny gap.
A small portion of the global shortage of humans that are expected to need to do something can be replaced by these Optimus humanoid robots.
So of the projected 85 million person global human shortage, okay, in 2030, I'm going to discuss how Tesla's Optimus can help with 1.5 million of those humans, right? Just 1.5 million. That's it. That's how I'm going to get to a $10 trillion market cap for Tesla.
Okay, so
Wow.
this is the fun part, right? So he says a couple things that are very interesting for us to think about. You know, as you know, I interview a bunch of people, Cern Basher, I've done James of Invest Answers, and a bunch of others who have forecasts for bots. But this is the first time somebody said this, right? Number one, let's just talk about the fact that there's a global labor shortage by 2030. That you don't need to displace any humans. It's not like taking somebody's job. Just focus on the need that's out there that's new because the population is falling significantly. And then the second thing was just 1.5 million. 1.5 million humanoid robots put to work out there. And he'll give you this maths and things, and we can break it down, see if we agree with that. But that's big. What's your what would you get out of that?
I'm with you 100%. One thing we saw after the lockdown was a wave of retirements. There were a lot of baby boomers who were overdue for retirement or who had the capacity for retirement, but not necessarily the desire. And during COVID, they chose to retire. They said, you know what, this is as good a time as any. And so retirements happened at a record pace. Well, all of a sudden you've got this difficulty hiring entry-level people. And they're saying nobody wants to work. And that wasn't the case. What had happened was when those people who'd been in their careers for 40, 50 years finally retired, everyone moved up the ladder one rung. And that meant that the bottom rung didn't have a whole lot of people in it because people's skills were being grossly underutilized. Anyone who's ever had a entry-level job, you know, I've worked in factories, I've worked in restaurants, and I've done a lot of jobs where I look at it and say, my gosh, my talents are just being wasted here. This could be done by a machine, and it should be. This doesn't mean that those people won't have work. It means they'll get to do work that's more satisfying, more rewarding, better matched to their skills. So I love it. It's absolutely right. And the complaint I've been seeing from some people is that the utility of the bot doesn't make sense to me. Unless it can do this very complicated, very specific task, it's worthless. It doesn't have to do the complicated specific tasks. It has to do any task that is currently handled by a human. And the example I saw was, can it take this rack of parts, push it over to station 27 and bring back the rack of empties? If it can do that, we've already got if a human is doing that job today, they can now go do the thing that's more complicated and requires a human touch. So that's what I think.
Especially when he points out in his analysis, we have to double check if it's correct, but he's saying just labor shortage alone will open up these job openings. And it doesn't require that many, 1.5 million. Let's watch his stats, his math. Let's see if its math looks good.
I have an assumption that by 2030 or the end of 2030, that of the 85 million humans that we are short in the world, all right, for commercial applications, that the Tesla bot will be able to serve have 1.5 million in service. Okay, so just 1.5 million humanoids globally. That's it, in service, generating $94,525 a year in gross revenue, puts us at $141 billion a year gross revenue. Okay, so when I look at the operating expenses, it's roughly $12 billion a year. Now, remember, we're going to spend about, I think it was like, I don't know, 60 billion. It was a fairly large number, $60 billion to produce these. So Tesla's going to have to take out some debt to produce these. I'm not concerned about that. I think that will be an easy get. With the upkeep, my upkeep was $8,000 a year. It was not $10,000. $8,000 a year. Gross operating expenses of $12 billion across the 1.5 million humanoids in service, with an annual operating profit of $129,792 million. Now, if we utilize Tesla's current PE ratio, I think it sits around 80 or so, And I actually think that Tesla is going to have PE expansion once we enter the humanoid era. Okay, well, let's just say that the PE stays where it is now of 80. That puts you at a $10.38 trillion valuation just for the Optimus division of Tesla.
Those are some pretty ambitious numbers. There's a range for every one of the numbers he said, and I would argue that every one of them he used was on the very high side.
Yeah, well, let's go through it. So $94,000 would be the revenue that Tesla would get per year. That's very much on the high side, but also potential. So the reason is it's only 1.5. We're not talking about, like every job, right? Depending on the job. And two, if you take just and he did, and they spend a lot of time in their podcast talking about the kinds of jobs and the kinds of pay that they get right now. And, the whole thing about 2 shifts versus 3 shifts when a bot's doing it. Charging somebody $95,000 per year sounds like a lot. And especially if it's a menial labor job that you were saying. That sounds high for sure. Yeah.
Right. But I would agree with you real quick that 94,000 divided by 3 is no longer insane. That's 30 grand. And that's how many shifts it could do. And you've got no L&I, you've got no Social Security, you don't have, because the benefits package on 3 employees is easily minimum 10, 20 bucks an hour. So that's 60 grand just in benefits that you're not having to pay. Yeah. So 94, definitely on the high side, but
I agree with you. Now, 8,000 per year for maintenance and service of the bot sounds right to me. That could be the high side too, but it could be correct, right? Because these bots are getting expensive. We think that a $10,000 per bot, maybe $20,000 per bot, maybe 30, but 20,000. But at scale, once you start making 1 million of them, you can reduce the cost of the bot very significantly, and the maintenance of it should be lower.
I haven't thought as much about what the maintenance revenue would be, but I think 8,000 is a bit high, but yeah.
And then
I think that would be the replacement cost to Tesla.
Okay. And then so then he talked about the cost, the R&D cost for this. To me, it's like he said, they've got our factories for this. They're not needing to build brand new factories per se. It's just lines. They have so much cash on hand. It's really just not an issue for me. It's really the operating cash flow in, cash flow out. Then the PE ratio of 80. What's your expectations for what would happen to the PE ratio if the bot appears?
So it's elastic, right? Eventually the PE ratio in the distant future will get down to normal blue chip rates. But if it's 2030 and the number of bots deployed is going up every year and they work, you could see a very high PE ratio. But I assume other companies would be nipping at their heels with competing robots. It's not like Tesla will be the only bot maker. They might be the best one. They might be the most cost effective. They might be the most capable, but it doesn't have to be the most capable for most jobs. So I think this is a space with a lot of room for growth, and the hardware advances we've seen have been pretty mind-blowing, and I can only assume that the software advances are moving at about the same pace. So I just don't know. What do you think on the PE?
Yeah, so first of all, very good observations. I love everything you just said. It's like perfect. So I think that the PE ratio for things that are established business, like the auto business, will fall. That's just the fact of life. You can't keep growing, right? You can't keep the pace. But we are certainly at the inflection rate for the auto business right now. So it's going to continue I still expect it for the next several years, but eventually it'll flatten. But then you have startup. This is a startup business with unlimited TAM. So I do think that the PE ratio should jump to be very high, decidedly so. Because, and what I don't agree, I love the way he just said, just 1.5 million, just to kind of put it like, in perspective, but it's not going to be just 1.5. Like you just said, there's going to be many bot competitors, but every bot company who makes a bot will sell every one of them. Now, if you don't agree with what I just said, that's okay. This is a point of discussion and thinking about it. But right now, I'm squarely on the belief that every bot maker makes will be sold for a long time. We're talking like wait until you get to 100 million to maybe 500 million of these bots. And like you said, there's, anybody who makes a bot will be able to sell it. So it's not just going to be 1.5. There's going to be way more than that. And
absolutely.
And so then it becomes which bot company can make that many bots. So you and I and Scott Walter and I have done many videos on the bots. I know all of them, right? We know about Figure, we know about Digit, we know about Boston Dynamics and all those guys, who by the way, is naturally not going to be manufacturing humanoid bot, but they're like viewed as being the leader for some reason, but they're not actually planning to. They don't have the money to. Their bot is not designed to do it. But anybody who does will sell it all. But who can build bots? Digit announced that they're going to have a factory in Oregon to build 10,000 bots a year, and they've got a partnership with Amazon. But they've never built bots before. They've never had a factory before. And great, they can build that. But who do we know can make mass production of millions, not 10,000 only, millions and millions and millions? And so it's a race for who can do this. It's going to be the Chinese factories that can produce this. Now, China came out just a month ago and they announced, the Chinese government announced that we want to be the leader in bot development by 2027. The leader. So you know what happens when the Chinese government says we want this to happen. They know they're in a precarious scenario right now. They're the manufacturing hub of the world. And if bots can make factories, nobody's going to need to manufacture things in China anymore. So they know they need to get on top of this. So, yeah. Anyway, so this.
Yeah. On that, so that company saying we're going to be building 10,000 bots a year, that sounds, maybe to some people that sounds like a lot. To me, that sounds like nothing, because that's 200 bots a week. 200 a week. When I picture an assembly line, I picture things just rolling off the end of it. And 200 a week, that's still pretty much kind of hand-built in stations, I imagine. And you will, great. So you're going to get to 10,000 a year. Maybe you add second and third shifts and go all weekend and make it 30,000 a year. And meanwhile, as soon as Optimus ramps, it goes insane. If bots get to 1.5 million, that is just the first step. At that point, they have reached mass acceptance. All they need to do is reach a cost advantage and production scaling.
That's
and
exactly
like you were
it.
saying, nobody scales the way Tesla scales, except China. And boy, and like you said, when they decide they're coming, they're coming.
And if you scale, then the costs go down. And then other bots makers, they need to compete in price. It's going to be harder for them. But again, I agreed with you. There's going to be hundreds of competitors. They will sell everything, but so will Tesla. And if you can make the most, so it doesn't matter if there's competitors or not in this scenario. The TAM for robots is so big. And so what he just did was 1.5 million. So that's his math. Now there's a lot of, I just picked certain parts of his clips here. So of course he's got explanation for other things, but let's watch this final clip here. This is the fun part.
By the way, I've never been a Tesla boy. Like I just never been a fanboy of Tesla. Ever.
But you are now.
I'm ripe to become one. I still want to kind of see. Listen, I don't know how I don't become one, quite honestly, because you can't stop this train. And I don't think Elon, I've heard enough from Elon to know that he's going full steam ahead with this project, and there's nothing that's going to slow him down. So at this point, just go ahead and call me a fanboy, because I have to be.
It's too big of a change to the economy of the world.
The Tesla situation and I'm sorry, not the Twitter situation with Elon derailing this for any reason.
Jordan, that is like my number one concern. Yeah, right. Absolutely. My number one concern is that Elon completely loses his mind or starts to spin worse than he has the last 18 months. And something devastating happens to the brand, something devastating happens to Elon, that ultimately causes just a lack of confidence in the company and its ability
Right,
to
that's the other thing.
execute.
So is this a hit by the bus type situation in that the only person that is strong enough to actually pull this off is Elon Musk? Is there any other leadership at the company that could, do something like this?
That has always been the rub for me, Jordan, with Tesla, because it doesn't seem like Elon has ever, done the Tim Cook thing that Steve Jobs did by pulling in a Tim Cook and giving him that sort of, power.
Although they
really
did.
I'm sure there are talented people there, but he sure doesn't, bring them up and.
He brought a whole bunch of people on stage, not any in the recent shows, but was it Power Day or AI Day? I think it was Power Day when they kind of tried to show how deep the bench was by having different product leads presenting their new features, their new stuff.
Jordan, I think, like I said, I'm sure there are plenty of talented people at Tesla, but you don't have that one. It's not like he's bringing up this overarching leader. Behind
and I think that at some point they need to have like a Tim Cook just in the wings, but
also, Dave,
they may already, they're just not being public about it.
But also, unlike Tesla, this is a massive logistics and servicing play too. And I think the one area where Tesla has maybe been weak is in the servicing of their vehicles as they're starting to scale. This is the type of thing where Apple just executed flawlessly when they got so big that they realized, you know what, we need to put as much effort into servicing how we handle Apple Care, our store experience, right? The Apple Genius experience and all of that. And Apple's one of the few companies where if you have an issue, you can actually call up their customer service and like speak to a human relatively quickly, as long as it's not after the holiday season. And they've just done an amazing job there, and Tesla has to do the same thing if they want to start deploying eventually tens of millions of Optimus humanoids at thousands of companies around the world that are going to rely on Tesla being able to service, maintain, replace those humanoids for their core business needs. So that would be an area of
You know what I was thinking when he said that? I'm thinking, the bot is the customer service rep. They're the genius. So you're going to basically talk to the bot and say, bot, can you tell Tesla, I need you to fix your arm. Bot is going to have Grok inside. It's going to be the most genius, and it's going to communicate to you better than a chat bot on the screen or customer service reps. You can talk to the bot and maybe very easily say to the bot, let me speak to a customer agent. And then the customer agent starts talking to you through the bot.
That would all be great. I don't count on those things coming to fruition until they do, because those have, the ideas have always been there. The thing about leadership, it was great to see the host step in and say, no, they have actually brought all the department heads on to show that it is not a one-man show, to show that there is competent, capable leadership across the board, every division. And that was Investor Day, I believe. And they went through them department by department, and you could decide for yourself how competent and capable each person is. So I am not worried about Elon's antics on X interfering with the development of bots. It's a business product. When the Cybertruck was first shown, people said, contractors will never buy these. And I said, contractors will decide if it makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, they won't buy it. And if it does, they will. It's dollars and cents every time. And there are personal preferences that can come into play that will sway you 5-10%. But once you exceed that threshold, you would buy the ugliest box in the world if it was half the price of something else to operate, and it is. So if the bot works, that's all that matters. And if it doesn't, that's all that matters. So I have no concern with that. If investors don't wish to get on board today because they don't like his attitude, just like how NHTSA was saying, or Senator Blumenthal was saying, Elon said mean things about our regulatory bodies and called them the fun police. If that is an insult worthy of singling out a company, that's, first of all, free speech. Calling someone the fun police is literally calling the government fun police is the First Amendment. You have that right. You should, but words are not the issue. Does it do the job or not?
Okay, so it is true, I think, that Elon is a key man risk because he's so important for the company, because he's such an amazing contributor. It's the first time that a CEO who sets strategy is also somebody who cares and loves to come into manufacturing and really making sure that it's like shave every millisecond off and walks the production line. He's very critical. But I'd like to point out that in terms of the company reaching $10 trillion of market cap, it's not as risky as we think it is today, because Elon already walked the line and he's already prepared the Gen 3 compact car. He's already spent the last year making sure that that's moving forward. He's doing the same thing with the bot. That's already moving forward. Now, some people might argue that maybe it's still a little early. If something happened to Elon this year, would the bot program die? Would the bot no longer produce 10 million of them? I think it'll still continue because they've already hit the difficult part of designing it, making sure that it's built for scale and manufacturing, making sure that it has Grok built inside, FSD version 12. All of these things are progressing. He's built a team. He's built the investment for the dojo, right? These things is what's required. And as the months go on, as the years go on, these things are being set in place so that it can deliver what we need to do in the future. It's the loss of net new business ideas that's going to be a big deal, per se. You know,
I agree. That's the Steve Jobs difference. You replace him with Tim Cook, who is great at execution, but not as much of a visionary. And a lot of the things that Tim Cook has done were all set in motion before he took over as CEO. And if Elon were to exit the company for any reason today, tomorrow, all of these, just what's in motion now is enough to get to the numbers that they're talking about under the assumptions they're using. And I agree that bot is sufficiently far along that it would not be canceled.
Okay. Anyways, isn't it fun to watch somebody who was not a Tesla guy discover Tesla, the investment, and then like mind blown, and then become a Tesla fanatic? And he goes, I can't help it. I'm going to become one as much as I don't want to be. Obviously still disagree with what Elon might, some of his antics. It is interesting to see that, but you can't deny the potential for this company. Obviously, it's just one other person out there, but it's just fun to see others like us who are long-term Tesla bulls watch this in action. And then you do your own math. You see what you think is possible and assumptions are correct. So thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. Follow him on My Tesla Weekend. See you guys. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.